Varadari Nandana Pachajana Samanatira Anachara Hari Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful Jai Radha Madhava. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. So I've really been enjoying reading Srila Prabhupada's letters because his early letters he wrote himself. So whenever Krishna speaks or Prabhupada speaks, I pay really close attention, really close attention. So I've been really relishing hearing Prabhupada's monumental efforts to begin a worldwide Sankirtan movement. Worldwide. He is sending letters here, there, and in 1966, he's writing all the letters himself. And I'm an English-speaking person. His writing is impeccable. Perfect grammar, perfect, everything about the way Srila Prabhupada has written is perfect. And even Brahmananda, he'll say that. He'll say, I was an English professor. And one time he corrected Prabhupada, but turned out he was wrong. So Prabhupada knew English better than we did. He used English better than we did. So we could learn from him in every way. And I was just even this past week my husband's tall, so he had a long dhoti and it was coming off. And I said, well, Prabhupada taught us to put on saris by tying a knot first. Prabhupada taught us to put the sari, we tie a knot so it won't come off. It's on. The pleats may do something, they may do something, but that's on. So he started tying his dhoti first instead of the normal way. So Prabhupada taught us even the practical things. Even the practical things. He was a sannyasi teaching the young girls how to put on sari. What did we know? We did not know. So how do I make this? Let's see. Okay. After the lecture, because Allen Ginsberg is very much involved in the earliest days, he was really enjoying the Hare Krishna mantra. So after the lecture, Allen came forward to meet Prabhupada, who was still sitting on his dais. Allen offered his respects with folded palms and touched Prabhupada's feet, and Prabhupada reciprocated by nodding his head and folding his palms. They talked together briefly, and then Prabhupada returned to his apartment. Allen mentioned to Harigriva that he would like to come by again and talk more with Prabhupada, so Harigriva invited him to come the next day and stay for probably prasadam. When he came, he said, "Don't you think Swamiji is a little too esoteric for New York?" Allen asked Harigriva. And Harigriva thought, maybe, he replied. Because Srila Prabhupada was straight out of Vrindavan, old school Vrindavan. I mean, nothing about him was even remotely westernized. So Harigriva replied, maybe. Harigriva then asked Allen to help the Swami since his visa would soon expire. He had entered the country with a visa for a 2-month stay and had been extending his visa for 2 more months again and again. So we, foreigners, know the anxiety of the visa parishani, the visa problem, because we are addicted to being in the Dham. And when the visa comes, like my godbrother Radhapati, he was here 16 years. He had big health problems. And finally they told, you have to leave the country. He was so attached, he started sweeping the Parikrama Marg at noon in the summer heat. He wanted to die because he would rather die in Vrindavan than live anywhere else. So we understand Prabhupada was just teaching his new boys and girls 2 months at a time, 2 months at a time. This had gone on for 1 year, but the last time he had applied for an extension, he had been refused. We need an immigration lawyer, said Harigriva. I'll donate that, said Allen Ginsberg. The next morning, Allen Ginsberg came with a check and another harmonium. Up in Prabhupada's apartment, he demonstrated his melody for chanting Hare Krishna. I went on the internet to listen to him chanting. Are you making it up a little? Right here. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Hare Krishna. I watched a video. I was trying to download it to myself to share it with you. He would write Hare Krishna, and chant. Most of us in the West, as soon as we heard Krishna's name, it was like a deer. The ears perked up, like, Krishna? What? This sound? And so in the same way, Allen Ginsberg he was attached to the chanting. He didn't understand it philosophically. So up in Prabhupada's apartment, he demonstrated his melody for chanting Hare Krishna, and then he and Prabhupada talked. Allen said, I was a little shy with him because I didn't know where he was coming from. I thought it was great now, and that he was here to expound on the Hare Krishna mantra, that would sort of justify my singing, because he was singing without knowing, but he was so still attracted, not knowing anything. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have a theological background to satisfy further inquiries. And here was someone who did. That's the beautiful thing about the way Srila Prabhupada taught us. He not only taught us what to do, he taught us why we should do it. There was a point where I was preaching to Indians in the West. Many, they were Gujaratis, and they had a summer camp in upstate Pennsylvania, and the grandmothers were all doing worship in the home. But the young children were asking, well, what relevance does it have to this time? At the time, I think it was 2000, around there. What relevance does all of this have? Well, Prabhupada taught us the science, why we would purify ourselves and we would rise through the modes of nature, and we would get Chit Shakti, our intelligence would blossom in our hearts just by exposing ourselves to the purificatory process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. He taught us how exactly it would happen, why it was best to do. And so for us, we would go. I went to the summer camp at one point, and there was an Indian professor who was a professor of Sanskrit. And he was asked by one of the students, how old is Sanskrit? And he said 2,000 years old. And I was in the back, and I had smoke coming out of my ears because Prabhupada said that Sanskrit is from the Vaikuntha. It's a spiritual language. Prabhupada taught us what is this process, the Devanagari script, the Sanskrit language. So I handed my computer. I was working on a website, Vaishnava.net at the time, just organizing everything Vaishnava. I handed it to my friend, and I walked to the front of the stage because he had come up in the same car as us, and so I felt like I knew him a little bit. So I asked if I could take the microphone, and so I started to preach strongly about what is Sanskrit, the spiritual language from the spiritual world, like Srila Prabhupada taught us, the spiritual, the Shabda Brahman. He taught us what is Shabda Brahman, that this is a spiritual language, eternal. And so I said, he right now in the academic world, and since he's in the academic world professionally, he's sharing with you the academic perspective, but the real perspective, what he really believes is, and I talked about Brahma Samhita and how the spiritual world is, you don't talk, you sing, and you don't walk, you dance. What Prabhupada taught us, and I got a standing ovation, even though I interrupted, and it was all Indians. The grandmothers were standing ovation. It was the grandmothers that they wanted me to talk all the time after that, because Prabhupada told us the science behind it. And even he was a professor and a Vaishnav. Still, he was speaking academia. And I, being Prabhupada's disciple, he gives courage. He gives courage to speak up when we need to speak up, and take the microphone when we need to take the microphone, and say what is true. So Alan's a little shy, and he's really happy that now someone really understands everything. So he said, I thought this was absolutely great. Now I could go around singing Hare Krishna. If anybody wanted to know what it is, I could send them to Swami Bhaktivedanta to find out. Perfect. And he was quite a famous figure. If anyone wanted to know the technical intricacies and the ultimate history, I could send them to him. This is perfect. We were all like that in the dark. We were reading this or that, but Prabhupada brought it to life. He brought the scriptures, he brought the knowledge to life, and he planted it in our hearts. He explained to me about his own teacher and about Chaitanya and the lineage going back. His head was filled with so many things, and what he was doing, Prabhupada was doing so much. He was already working on his translations. He always seemed to be sitting there just day after day and night after night. And I think he had 1 or 2 people helping him. He was already working on his translations. Prabhupada was very cordial with Alan, quoting a passage from Bhagavad-Gita where Krishna says that whatever a great man does, others will follow. He requested Alan to continue chanting Hare Krishna at every opportunity so that others would follow his example. He told about Lord Chaitanya's organizing the first civil disobedience movement in India. Just wiggle it? Okay. He told about Lord Chaitanya's organizing this first civil disobedience movement in India, leading a Sankirtan protest march against the Muslim ruler. Alan was fascinated. He enjoyed talking with the Swami. It was a time of rebellion. We were rebelling against the establishment. We were rebelling against war. We were rebelling against all the materialism. America had become extremely opulent, and they were driving these huge cars with wings on the end of them. It was a ridiculous time as far as materialistic pleasure was concerned. And we were just kind of fed up with it as the young people. But they had their differences. When Alan expressed his admiration for a well-known Bengali holy man, Prabhupada said that holy man was bogus. Even Srila Prabhupada, he was following Gandhi, and his spiritual master tuned him in too. So when we go before the spiritual master, we appear as a great fool. I was reading Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's works, and he was astounded how intensely heavy his Guru Maharaj was to him. He was a brilliant mathematician, having written Surya Siddhant, mastered Sanskrit at the age of 7. He was a genius, but his spiritual master found him a great fool. Can you imagine? He was the most brilliant person of his time. But when we come before the Guru Maharaj, yesterday I was just speaking with, he was a sannyasi from another marg who met Prabhupada at Kumbh Mela in 77. And we got to go with Srila Prabhupada to that Kumbh Mela, and we went to the last one and we went to this one. That's why I have such a nice sounding voice, a lot of smoke there. But Prabhupada taught us that these melas were important. He came to the 71 mela, the 77 mela. So, but this particular fellow, I was just hearing the story how he met Prabhupada at Kumbh Mela. He came with an intention of defeating Prabhupada, philosophically. And as soon as he came into Srila Prabhupada's presence, he was speechless. Prabhupada was like molten gold. His presence was not like any other person that you ever met, ever. Never did you see a person, a Vaikuntha man, someone who didn't appear to touch the ground, someone whose motions were so fluid and graceful, he really earned his title, His Divine Grace. So Alan was shocked. He never before heard a Swami severely criticize another's practice. Prabhupada was severe. He'd say, I kick on their face. He wasn't like, he didn't mince words. He was like, I'll kick on their face. Prabhupada explained on the basis of Vedic evidence, the reasoning behind his criticism, and Alan admitted that he had naively thought that all holy men were 100% holy. But now he decided that he should not simply accept sadhu, including Prabhupada, on blind faith. He decided to see Prabhupada in a more severe critical light. Danger, danger, danger. Still, even they say when you're selecting your spiritual master, you need to be a qualified disciple, and you need to be certain that your spiritual master can guide you back to Krishna. So Alan said, I had a very superstitious attitude of respect, which probably was an idiot sense of mentality. And so Swami Bhaktivedanta's teaching was very good to make me question that. Generally speaking, the Jewish folks they're iconoclastic. They don't believe in deities. They have the burning bush, the voice coming from the burning bush. So they don't even say God. It's like G, it's a dash D. You know, in some ways, yes, what can we say that could adequately glorify, express God or Krishna? So in some ways it may not be wrong, but in some ways, no, we want to embrace all Krishna's representations. It made me question him and not take him for granted. Alan described a divine vision he'd had in which William Blake had appeared to him in sound and in which he had understood the oneness of all things. A sadhu in Vrindavan had told Alan that this meant that William Blake was his guru. But to Srila Prabhupada, this made no sense. Alan, the main thing above and beyond all our differences was an aroma of sweetness that he had, a personal, selfless sweetness, like total devotion. You couldn't deny that, no matter how critical your mind might be. And that was what always conquered me. Whatever intellectual questions or doubts I had, or even cynical views of ego, in his presence there was a kind of personal charm coming from dedication that conquered all our conflicts. Even though I didn't agree with them, I always liked to be with them. Isn't that beautiful? Even though I didn't agree with them, I always liked to be with them. It's poetic. Alan agreed at Prabhupada's request to chant more and to try. Alan agreed, and at Prabhupada's request to chant more and to try to give up smoking. You see, he's got this sign on him, Alan, pot is fun. So Prabhupada was gradually taking away our anarthas. Little at a time. He would say, do not let this get in the way of your relationship with Krishna. Stop one cigarette at a time. One cigarette, you stop that. Stop that. That was a pastime with Shama Sundar, who was carving Jagannath deities. Prabhupada said, every day you smoke one less, and very soon you won't be smoking. Ellen agreed. Do you really intend to make these American boys into Vaishnavas? Ellen asked. Yes, Prabhupada replied happily, and I will make them all Brahmanas. Wow. That's amazing. Alan left a $200 check to help cover the legal expenses for extending the Swami's visa and wished him good luck. Brahmanas, Alan didn't see how such a transformation could take place. September 23rd, it was Radhastami, the appearance day of Srimati Radharani, Lord Krishna's eternal consort. Prabhupada held his second initiation. Keith became Kirtananda, Steve became Satsarup, Bruce became Brahmananda, and Chuck became Achutananda. It was another festive day with a fire sacrifice in Prabhupada's front room and a big feast. Prabhupada lived amid the drug culture in the neighborhood where the young people were almost desperately attempting to alter their consciousness, whether by drugs or by some other means, whatever was available. Prabhupada assured them that they could easily achieve the higher consciousness they desired by chanting Hare Krishna. It was inevitable that in explaining Krishna consciousness, he would make allusions to the drug experience, even if only to show that the two were contrary paths. He was familiar already with Indian sadhus who took ganja and hashish on the plea of aiding their meditations. And even before he had left India, hippie tourists had become a familiar sight on the streets of Delhi. The hippies liked India because of the cultural mystique and easy access to drugs. They would meet their Indian counterparts who assured them that taking hashish was spiritual. And Prabhupada, even when one of our godbrothers was selling dupe to the hash dealers to mix with the hash so that it would cut it to be thinner, Prabhupada wouldn't even touch the money he brought to give to him. He said, put it in the hundi. He wouldn't touch it. That's how he felt about that. He was really expressive. It was the way of life. The local head shops carried a full line of paraphernalia: marijuana, LSD, peyote, cocaine, and hard drugs like heroin and barbiturates were easily purchased on the streets and in the parks. Underground newspapers reported important news on the drug scene. They featured a cartoon character named Captain High and ran crossword puzzles that only a seasoned head could answer. Head means like somebody who's takes drugs. Now we get into Yahoo, the letters. I love the letters. You see what Prabhupada's dealing with, though. Okay, now, up in his room at night, Prabhupada's planning to take over the world. Planning to literally take over the world. So, but look who he's dealing with. Not even monkeys. Still, Prabhupada had a way of being able to empower us, clean us up. He was so happy. He said, I am making hippies into happies. Shiny, beautiful people. So this is a letter to Panchu. It's October 11th, 1966. My dear Panchu, since I have come to America, I have not heard anything from you. In the beginning, I had to write 2 or 3 letters to your revered father, but I did not receive any reply from him. I therefore did not write him again, and still I am anxious to hear about you all. Please, therefore, let me know how you all are. Is your mother and Bahuma your wife, and how is your father? I hope everything is all right with you by grace of Sri Sri Radha Damodar Jew. Please reply this letter per return post, as well as please let me know if you are receiving 5 rupees per month regularly from the Punjab National Bank Ltd in Vrindavan. I'm anxious to know about it. He was sending the money. At Gopinath Bazaar, almost in front of Mahaprabhu's temple, there is a Bengali gentleman's shop for selling pan and pictures. I want 1 dozen each of Sri Radhakrishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing with his associates. Please ask him what is the price, whether he can send these pictures by post to my above American address. On hearing from you, I shall send you the money either to the above shopkeeper or to you as you write to me. How is Sarojini and other devotees of the temple? Besides this, you may ask your father whether he is still interested in the matter of starting the Rupanuga Paravidyapit. Listen to the sound of that name. It's so beautiful. Rupanuga Paravidyapit, in the land he proposed to give me on lease terms. Perhaps you remember this proposal. When I first came to your temple, you measured the land yourself. Now, if your father is agreeable to the proposal, the construction of the buildings can now be taken up, and my American disciples are ready to spend for the proposed building of Sri Rupanuga Paravidyapit. It is if your father decides to give me any other land within the compound of Sri Sri Radha Damodarji temple for the above building, that also can be accepted. If so, please open correspondence in this connection, and I shall place the matter to my American disciples for consideration. They are eager to do something at Vrindavan according to my direction. Now here is the opportunity to reconstruct the temple compound of Sri Sri Radha Damodar Jio. So I shall be very glad to hear from you or your father in reply to this letter, and I'm thanking you in anticipation. So he's proposing to totally redo Radha Damodar and make this also this Rupanuga Para Vidyapit. It sounds very nice. I wonder if it can still happen, because Prabhupada had Vox City, and whatever he conceived and believed, it eventually becomes achieved. That's Prabhupada. Every single thing that he's ever said comes to pass. Even he can say in passing, like what the dimensions are in building Mayapur, everything was shastrically correct. Just walking by in passing, speaking Prabhupada's mouth to Krishna's ears. Vox City was definitely. Now, in another letter to Janus from New York, 29 October 1966. My dear Janus, I thank you for your letter of 25th instant, and I have noted the contents carefully. I have complete agreement for the arrangement that you desire to make in connection with the exhibition at Montreal. Yes, we shall go in a batch for performing the kirtan ceremony, both in the exhibition pandal as well as University Hall, and you can arrange in that way. Here things are improving and people in New York taking in importance the kirtan movement. The enclosed papers and newspaper cuttings will give you an idea. I have already published some new literatures, namely Krishna Reservoir of Pleasure, Who is Crazy, Introduction to the Bhagavad-Gita, Back to Godhead, etc. And our society is coming in prominence daily. We are just trying to purchase a property in New York at $90,000, and the students are taking the responsibility. Thus, I think there is good prospect for this society being a world organization. And you must try to have a center at Montreal as soon as possible. Under separate parcel posts, I am sending you all the above newly published literatures, and I shall request you to enlist as many subscribers for Back to Godhead magazine, because we have to submit at least 200 subscribers' names to the postal authorities for getting concessional rates. Prabhupada was negotiating with everybody. Everybody. I am glad to learn that you are chanting regularly, and I hope you are gradually getting some enlightenment in Krishna consciousness. Our path is genuine, sublime, and easy. So there must be a worldwide organization for pushing the movement in this human society, so much afflicted by material advancement only, afflicted by material advancement. Madness is what's resulting, so much madness. As my representative, you can see Mr. Luthra and arrange things as you think best. Whatever arrangement you will make on behalf of the society will be accepted by us. I understand. I understand that you have done some French renditions of my writings, including the essay that you have taken with you. I have about 150 sets of Bhagavatam with me. Please let me know if you have already sold the sets that you have taken from here. Hope you are well, with my good wishes for you and your wife. Affectionately, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Already, Prabhupada, he's produced a number of books. He's continuing with book distribution. He's organizing everything. He's trying to get the subscription for Back to Godhead magazine going. In a letter to Srimati Murariji. Now, I really have a huge respect, because the more letters I read, the more I see she didn't only bring Prabhupada to the West. She was a conduit for getting him things, storing things, getting monies back to India. She was a conduit. She continued service. And he reported quite quite at least once or twice a month he reported to her. So it was like a real journal of what was going on. This is November 13th, 1966. Madam Srimati Murari Bai Sahiba. Please accept my greetings, and I hope everything is well with you. Surely you will be very much pleased to know that my preaching work is getting ground in this country. She was also really encouraging to him. Prabhupada was like, every month almost, he would go check to see if he could take passage back to India. It wasn't easy. Not at all. Even he spoke the language, it wasn't easy. So, and she preached to him, no, you stay. So I love this amazing being, this little picture that we have of her with Srila Prabhupada. The most important factor is that my followers and assistants are all young Americans. They are educated and possess an aptitude for grasping reality. Under separate cover, I am dispatching the following publications, which my society has already published. 2 issues of Back to Godhead, Who is Crazy? That was a definitive situation because he was showing that modern society, they'd lost humanity through technology and science. Humanity is at least you're not just creating scientific things for war. That's an animal process. War is an animal. When you go into violence like that, you're no longer human. You're going into something more than that. Unless it's Krishna says to do it, then we have Bhagavad-Gita. That's very, very different. So the most important factor is that my followers and assistants are all young Americans. So the Who is Crazy, it was a little pamphlet we were distributing. Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure. I loved this. We were distributing it on the streets. And Introduction to Gita Upanishad. And I am enclosing herein the prospectus of the society and some press cuttings from which you will know how the movement is growing. I am very much obliged to you for all your supports for me in my mission, and I shall be more glad if you enroll yourself as an honorary member in this great society. Some of my Indian friends have already acceded to this request. I hope you will also do so. I want to make this movement actually international, and as a great devotee of Lord Krishna, not only yourself, but all others should become members of this international society. Tomorrow, we are just going to celebrate Lord Krishna's worship as Giridhari at Govardhan Puja, and we have invited many friends to partake of prasad. You will be glad to learn that I am distributing prasadam to my followers 20 daily, and Krishna is arranging food for them. I wish to increase this number more, and my good boys are trying to purchase a bigger house for this purpose. Shriman Chokshi, your secretary, wanted to visit the States while I was coming. Now I am in a position to sponsor him. If you so desire, please let me know, and I shall send the sponsoring letters in this connection. My blessing for Chokshi and all your staff members, and my good wishes for you. Awaiting your early reply, yours sincerely, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada engaged everyone, and he continued to engage everyone. A letter to Mr. Darwadkar, November 26, 1966. The Universal Book House, Sita Bhavan, Tulsi Pipe Road, Dadar, Bombay, 28, India. Dear Mr. Darwadar, please accept my greetings. Kindly refer to your letter of the 26th February 1966. If you have not been able to sell all the books left with you for sale, you may kindly return the books to Srimati Murariji, Sumati of Scindia House, Dougal Road, Ballad State, Bombay. Or if you think you shall be able to sell them, you can keep the books on sale account, and in that case, you will please immediately hand over 2 sets of books, Srimad Bhagavatam, to Srimati Murariji, as above mentioned, and obliged. I shall be glad to receive from you a statement of account for books sold and amount deposited with the bank. Kindly treat this as urgent and obliged, awaiting your early reply and thanking you in anticipation. Yours sincerely, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. In this day of texting where everything is like 3-word sentences with acronyms, like we would say PAMO, AGSTSP, which was a short thing for please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, because in the telex days, every word cost, and Prabhupada was very thrifty, so we shortened these things to make it just 2 words instead of the formalities. But you see the formality in Srila Prabhupada's writing. He's personally writing it, and he's so gracious and so formal and so beautiful. We are brief to the point of practically being offensive these days. It can be so easily misunderstood. The way that we're communicating and the impersonal way that the world is going now. But you can see how gracious Prabhupada is. He's managing the society, managing book sales. He still has the time and energy to be gracious. We hope to follow in his footsteps and not get pulled by this Kali impersonalism. It's happening. A letter to Srimati Murariji, also in November 20. I'm looking to see if it's the same thing. No, it isn't. I thank you very much for your letter of the 22nd instant, and I have noted the contents. I am enclosing here with 1 copy of the letter to my bookseller in Bombay. He is busy. He's selling books. Brihat Mridanga, he said. You go on the side of the street, 1 block of people hear you chanting. But you publish books like Gita Jayanti, getting out the books. The Lord speaking himself. This is how we set the world on fire with time-release bombs of books. They're time-released. If they're on the shelf in a house, sooner or later, that Krishna-conscious bomb goes off. It goes off and someone will pick up the book in their most dire time of need, start to read, everything will make sense to them, and the bomb goes off. Krishna-conscious bomb goes off. The book manuscripts are ready for printing. I was printing them with great difficulty by collecting small amounts of money, and due to my absence, they are not being printed. If your good self or somebody else come forward to cooperate in this connection, the printing work can immediately be revived. In the meantime, I have also prepared a commentary on the Bhagavad-Gita, purely on bhakti principle, and when published, it will be a unique publication of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. So far, all the commentaries made on the Bhagavad-Gita, like Dr. Ramakrishnan or others, have no knowledge in the bhakti cult. Therefore, such commentaries on the Bhagavad-Gita are not authorized. In the early days, when Prabhupada was actually just getting started in doing Chaitanya Charitamrita, we were reading from Professor Sanyal's version of Chaitanya Charitamrita. But it was so exciting when a chapter would come. We would gather round and enjoy it like bees to the lotus, just enjoy Prabhupada's writings 1 chapter at a time. It was so almost felt like we were stealing. We were getting some secret information from Srila Prabhupada. And he was giving it so freely that you actually felt like, how do you even deserve this? How do we even deserve this? Prabhupada is giving us so much. Bhakti asai priya asi me rahasya e atad uttam. Nobody has any access in the Bhagavad-Gita without being devotee of the Lord. But all the commentaries in English now available in the market are made by the non-devotee mental speculators. As such, if my Bhagavad-Gita will be a unique presentation, if they are published, I shall be very much glad if you kindly cooperate in this connection. I have not as yet received the reply of my letter dated 13th instant, and I hope to receive it soon. I consider your good self as one of the associates of Srimati Radharani, Lord Krishna's most beloved consort. So your prayer to Lord Krishna for success of my mission in the Western countries will soon be heard. But at the same time, I expect full cooperation of all the devotees of Krishna in India, especially in Bombay, in this mighty progress. This reminds me, I used to have, it was a handwritten, it was written in Prabhupada's own, he wrote it. He requested, it is my request, that all the Vaishnav Sampradayas cooperate together to spread this Krishna consciousness worldwide. In this way, the whole world will become devotees. It was in Prabhupada's own hand. It was a copy, of course. It wasn't the original, but I wonder where that is, because it was like seared on my heart, that Prabhupada was asking all Vaishnavas from every line. We may quibble over this little bit of philosophy or that little bit of philosophy, but when we come together in the marketplace of Sankirtan, the holy name of Krishna, all the differences are resolved. They go away. If we're simply chanting the names of Krishna, where is the conflict? There's none. So if we all come together to cooperate, all gentlemen, all gentle ladies from all over the world, this is Prabhupada's plan. This is how he said we will take over the world. So he says, I wish to train up the American youths in the line of devotional service and entrust them with temples of Sri Radha Krishna in various parts of this part of the world. With my good wishes, I beg to remain yours sincerely, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami. Now, keep in mind, many people had come, like Vivekananda, Paramahansa, Amrit Desai. So many gurus had come, but no one installed deities. No one, not one, installed deities. In the face of the iconoclastic, the Christian Judaic religion, they were iconoclasts. They were deity bashers. They would speak in flowery ways, but no one installed the deities. Prabhupada came, and in the face of so much opposition, he taught us to worship Sri Radha Krishna, Kartamashai, Lord Jagannath, Panchatattva. He taught us how to worship deities of Krishna. And he set up temples where deities are worshipped. He was the first to do such a thing in the Western world. The first. That is monumental. And all, like Amrit Desai, he came to Prabhupada's, it was his Vyas Puja in Alachua, and he was remarking about this point. The Pushti Marg devotees had bought 300 acres that he had, like 300 acres in upstate Pennsylvania. They bought it and they made it into Vraj Dham. But he was saying, in the history of the Western world, Srila Prabhupada was the first. And for many years, 20, maybe more years, the only guru that established deity worship. This is not a small thing. This is like Prabhupada, kick in their face. Prabhupada had courage. So much courage. I'm so grateful to have been in the wake of his courage, the wake of his preaching of Krishna consciousness, the wake of his love of God. That wake, when a big boat passes, there's a huge wake, and everything kind of pulls into it. We all just pulled into the wake of love of Godhead that was coming from Srila Prabhupada. Now, in another letter to Janas, he was a temple president in Montreal. So you can see right here, there's an invoice to do with books. Prabhupada was really working on book distribution in a super practical way, book publication, book sales. Why? Because when you are in the confines of your own home, you may need to have a word of Krishna consciousness. And if that's in your home, even if they're planted in people's homes, like I said before, they're time bombs. They go off. When I was taking care of my mother, I had Tulsi, so she could see Tulsi. I had a deity of Krishna in her living room, and I had Bhagavad-Gita. Because by her maintaining these things, she was born and raised Christian. She, as she was becoming very old, she was saying, "Oh, Krishna's so pretty," you know. She was appreciating, you know, but we plant these seeds here and there, secretly, or not secretly, any way we can. Now here, Prabhupada is saying, "My dear Janas, I'm so glad to receive your kind letter dated November 30th, 1966, with the enclosure of $50 on account for my books. Thank you very much. Just on receipt of your letter, I have already sent you through the Railway Express Company the following books and literatures: 18 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, 25 copies of Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure, 25 cents, 25 copies of Who's Crazy, 25 cents, 40 copies Introduction of Gita Upanishad, 35 cents, 40 copies of Back to Godhead, number 1, 15 cents, 35 copies of Back to Godhead, 15 cents, 35 copies of Back to Godhead, 15 cents. Very practical. And that's one of the things I have really noticed. The most spiritual people are the most practical. They're really down to earth. They're the most practical and the most courageous to not be all sentimental like, "Oh no, we don't take money." We do. We engage everything in Krishna service. So he was very practically pushing on book distribution. "I am so glad to hear that you are now married. I pray, Krishna, that you may henceforth live happily as a householder without thinking of separation from your wife. According to Vedic wisdom, a good wife is a good assistant for material and spiritual prosperity. Even if there is some deficiency, you should try to correct it without thinking in a Western way. I hope your wife may be taking interest in your chanting Sankirtan and reading Srimad Bhagavatam. She has become your life's companion. It is your duty to induce her peacefully in the matter of spiritual advancement of life. Material bodily connections may be taken as secondary. Your primary occupation should be Krishna consciousness. I'm sorry to hear that you have lost some money to the extent of $350 and that you are involved in some court case. In the future, as far as possible, try to avoid such entanglements. Of course, Krishna will save you if you are forced to be so entangled." Krishna does save us. Again and again, Prabhupada would point out, Krishna saved you, you would have died. Like when my husband was in an accident in Hawaii, Prabhupada, big-eyed, he said, "Oh, you would have died. Krishna saved you." Again and again throughout the day, that day, big-eyed, "Oh, you were saved. Krishna saved you." So now you can distribute the books and the paper back to Godhead to the best of your capacity. And if you require more, we shall be glad to send them. When you send the remittance, please also send separate accounts for the books and the other literatures. I think I shall be engaged in California during January and February, so April and May will be quite suitable for me to go to Montreal. To go at both times will not be possible. If, however, I do go to California, then I shall write to you. I thank your father for his remembering me. And if I meet him sometime, I shall not disclose your wedding, rest assured. Please send me your news at least twice in a month. Yours affectionately, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hari Haribo. Thank you for being so attentive, Hare Krishna. And I'm sorry about my croaking, Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.